In this video, I'm going to be showing you why you should be using Make. Now, if you don't know what Make is, it is an automated workflow platform. If you've heard of Zapier or use it, it is very similar to that. However, we have found it to be more powerful, quicker, and cheaper than its counterpart. I'll be showing you not only the differences between Make and Zapier, but at the end, we're also going to build 3 distinct workflows built entirely with Make while connected to our bot systems to make everything more powerful. The first one is going to be a reminder workflow. I mean, if you have any sort of meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, you know how annoying or frustrating it can be to have last-second cancellations, or if you're doing virtual, people just not show up. But the reality of it, it's not people hate you, it's just they forget. People have busy lives. If you don't remind them that you've got a meeting, chances are they'll forget and they won't come to it. Second workflow is going to be a very simple lead capture workflow, meaning when somebody submits, whether it's an appointment, whether it's a consultation, you need some way of knowing about it, as well as the customer needs some sort of confirmation that they've received that. So we're going to take a webhook from Webflow, connect it into Airtable or Google Sheets, and then not only you are going to get an email, as well as your customer confirming everything. Last but not least, if you've been watching the videos, we here at All Might make AI-enabled conversational agents or chatbots. Now, a very common issue that occurs is questions that the bot cannot answer. Not because it does not know the answer, but it doesn't know the specifics of the answer. This is more related to every company operates in a different way, which is why there's always some nuance. And we prefer to stay on the safe side. So, but what do you do when those sorts of questions are asked? Well, we need a backup, and that's what this workflow is going to do. We're going to connect it to a Google Sheet that is purely made of questions that people are asking that the bot was not able to answer, so that you can be aware of it and then go ahead and improve it. Let's get started. Now, before we actually go ahead and build these workflows, I think it's important. I'm sure a lot of you are already using Zapier because that is the more well-known software. However, there's a couple different reasons why we use it. The most blaring one is just the pricing of Zapier is so egregious compared to the one of Make. The starter plan on Zapier is basically the pro plan or the highest plan apart from enterprise you can get on Make. And now, if a lot of you are just getting started, you want to keep overhead as low as possible. And these monthly subscriptions, they add up. More importantly than that is that if you got a lot of clients or you start getting a lot of runs through this, 750, as says here, runs out pretty quickly. But on Make side, the cheapest one, you got 10,000. You'll be fine. For people who are more advanced, the other sort of big issue that comes with Zapier, for the reason why we actually switched over, was some of the tools that we want to use on Zapier weren't as simple, and it's not as intuitive, especially for newer people. If you're getting on somebody, whether it's a VA, an assistant, an employee, doesn't matter. You want them to be able to just quickly hop in and start understanding how to use these things. Zapier, we found, has had more difficulty with that sort of learning curve, as well as we've had a lot of issues with it and Airtable, so we had to go ahead and actually switch over to Make. We're glad we did. I think there's even more integrations on Make than Zapier. But back to actually building our workflows. All right, and we are now in Make. Now, if you don't have a Make account, you can actually go ahead and use a link in the description. It is an affiliate link, helps us out. But for the first build we're going to do is going to be a very simple lead capture or lead workflow, which in other words means that whenever somebody leaves their information with us, we want something to happen, whether that's an email, whether that's we want to notify our VA to call them, doesn't really matter. We just need some sort of sequence to happen. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take a webhook from Voiceflow. We're then going to input that information into an Airtable, and then from there, that information is going to be emailed to both the customer as well as our partner or the client of this specific example, so that both people are aware. So let's get started. Now, if you've been watching the contractor series, this should be nothing new, but you remember when we made the post sequence to Zapier, actually? We've now switched over to Make. It does nothing else changes apart from this little URL, but if you're unfamiliar with it, you're going to want to send information over from Voiceflow. Now, where is that information going to go? Well, you need some way to catch it, or a webhook that catches things. So the first thing you want to do, which is going to trigger this in the rest of the sequence, is going to be a webhook. And now we're going to use one that receives data or triggers when data is received. And you can go ahead and either make a new webhook or use one of the pre-existing ones. We're going to use add. We're going to create a new one called YouTube example. Example. Now I'm going to go ahead and store that address. And the first thing we want to come and do is try it. So now after updating this, let's go ahead and send a request. and then go ahead and press request. You should get code 200, means it works. And this has already gotten it. It's understood all the information that's been received, which is very good. The next step of this workflow is going to be, well, let's put this information somewhere. For this case, I'm going to be using an Airtable. You can use Google Sheet. It doesn't really matter. We use an Airtable because we found it's easier to manipulate because it's got multiple, I think they're called presets, but basically you can see like a calendar version as well as a graph version, like integrate with it without having to go around and messing with it yourself. You're going to want to go ahead and create a new record and choose the base that you need. I'm going to go ahead and go to and put that in appointments. Now you can go ahead and fill this information as you wish. The name with the name, email, phone, as well as address. And you can ignore the rest. This is just because on that specific Airtable, there's a lot more information on it. But for the purposes of this video, this is more than enough. Because keep in mind, you can always go back in Voiceflow and add more keys and more data. Press OK. Now that works. The next step, and for this example, what we're going to do, like I mentioned earlier, the first email is going to go to our client, which means the construction business that is receiving this info. And for that, we're just going to use a Gmail. Just letting them know, hey, look, somebody has submitted their information. Add a recipient. I'll add myself. This is where you would also put your client's name, or if you're building this for yourself, anybody who needs to have access to this email. Or anybody who needs to receive this information would be a better word. So maybe it's your sales guy, maybe it's your VA who needs to go ahead and call them. Whoever is responsible or whoever needs to see this. The subject, you can put whatever you want. I'm just going to put new lead for now. And then the content, I'll just go ahead and write, you've got a new lead, call them now, and you need this, and the information that follows along with it. And just like that, that's pretty much done. Last but not least, we're also going to want to send a different Gmail, this time to the customer, whoever did submit the lead, just to confirm that we got their information right. And if we did get something wrong, we're also going to want to leave a bit of information on how to actually go ahead and correct that. So like before, go ahead and send an email. You're probably going to want to go ahead and connect your Gmail if this is the first time you've ever used Make. And then now the key difference here is that you want to be careful of who you send these Gmails to, because it can get quite confusing, especially as you may create larger and larger workflows. It's really important to not mix up. I mean, in this case, it really wouldn't be that bad, but if you are sending sensitive information or important data, you want to make sure that you're sending it to the right people. So for this case, I'm still going to send it to myself. Subject's going to be like, you've got new lead. Actually, no, this is going to the customer. So I would probably write something like, we've received your info. And then you can write something along the lines of, this is just a confirmation, we've received your info, and we'll get in touch soon. I would also go ahead and add their information, and then at the bottom, like a number that they can call in case that they did not, or tell them to reply to this email if this is the wrong information. And just like that, workflow number 1 is done. Now, if we go ahead and test this out, I'm actually going to turn it on. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and we're going to turn it on. Now I'm going to resend this information, and if everything was done right, I should receive something very, very soon. Well, look at that. I've received not only, this is the one that you as a business should receive. And then in this case, this is what the customer would see. Now you can go ahead and mess around with not the HTML. You can go ahead and mess around with the formatting and how pretty it looks. But starting off, this is a really, really solid start. Now for event number 2, or workflow number 2, sorry. In this one, we're actually going to create a reminder, very, very simple reminder sequence. And if you've used Go High Level before, or if you use Go High Level at all, you know this is one of the options that is available. However, if this is the only reason you need it, it isn't that necessary, as you can get something that's quite similar to it using Make. And it actually works very simply. I'll make myself smaller. We'll go here. And what you're going to do is create a new scenario. And if you're on the free plan, keep in mind that the maximum amount of scenarios that you can have that are live on the free plan is 2. If you need more than that, I think it's actually unlimited. You got to upgrade to the more expensive plan, which is around $10 a month. But regardless, this is that workflow where it's basically going to check your calendar, and then every day it's going to check the appointments you have for the next day, and it's going to send a reminder to everybody that falls under the specific sort of consultation events, and then send them an email saying, hey, look, this is just a reminder. Looking forward to it. If you can make it, please let me know. Let's get started. First thing you want to do is go ahead and go to your Google Calendar, and you're going to have to connect your Google Calendar. We're going to tell it to search for any specific events. After that is a start date. What I would suggest is using now, so that it's whenever this runs. I want it to be now. And the end date, if you look at the bottom all the way here, you can add variables, or you can add time to you can add a function. So what we're going to do is we're going to add days, which is this. We're then going to go ahead, and the first variable is going to be from when is it adding the days, and that's going to be now, from the time that this is run. The next one, okay, well, how many days are we adding? And for this example, let's just say we're adding 1 day. And the rest you can pretty much leave blank, except for a query, which is you don't want it to return every single appointment. You also don't want it to email every single appointment regardless of what it is. And let's say you're a coach, you do consultations, or if you have a virtual appointment for one of your contracting jobs, then you would actually go ahead and put what is the common word between every single one of them. For this case, let's use consultation. And now if you go ahead and run this, it's going to return a bunch of basically events that have the word consultation. For us, we do not have the word consultation we don't use the word consultation, it didn't return anything. But now if I were to go ahead and if I were to put the word check-in, or just check, and then do the same thing, you'll notice it did return a. Once that's done, you can go ahead, once you're happy with that, you can go ahead and add another one. And now this is going to be quite simple. It's going to be very similar to the previous one. Now, you actually want to invite the attendees, and I was looking for it for a little bit, but it's right here. In attendees, email, and then you want to put in whoever is attending this. And there you go. Now the subject can be whatever you'd like. So you're going to want to go ahead and not invite anybody. It needs to be the person who's going to actually attend the meeting. And to invite that specific person, you're going to go here and you're going to go under the word attendees. It's a bit hidden. Choose attendees. And the subject can be whatever you'd like. Reminder for meeting. And the content we're just going to put in, you can write whatever you like as well, but just for this example, let's write, this is a reminder for our meeting tomorrow. Please contact if you can't reach me, or if you can't make it. And that's pretty much it for this specific workflow. Now this is a very basic one that only covers 1 day, but what you could do is there's a thing called a router in Make, and that allows you to actually separate or filter based on a specific variable. So let's say you wanted one that was for whenever an appointment reaches 5 days out. Then you would just create a router, and you can go and set up filters so that I want this to be triggered if this is 5 days away. And you can go ahead and, as you get more used to Make, you'll see it's pretty straightforward. It's really just getting over that learning curve, which can be a bit challenging. But after that, they've made it so simple and so clear that anybody can start getting used to it. It'll take you maybe an afternoon to understand all of it. And our final workflow that we're going to create today is going to be a bit more, not advanced, but it is going to be a bit more on the technical side, especially if you've never dealt with any APIs, anything like that. But I'll try to walk through it as simply as possible. Like I mentioned earlier, the main point of it is that whenever you're dealing with these conversational agents or chatbots, is you always want to have some sort of backup in the event or some sort of failsafe so that the customer is not just left in the dark about what's going on. So if they ask a question that for whatever reason the bot cannot answer, there needs to be somebody who's notified, and you also need to notify the customer saying, hey, look, unfortunately, we weren't able to answer your question. Here's what you can do about it. So what we want to do is, as usual, you're going to start off with a webhook. And this is going to catch information from the Voiceflow bot. Triggers when it receives data. Create a new one called failsafe. Go ahead and save that. And you can just leave that there for now. Now what you want to do is hop on over to wherever you're designing this agent. For us, it's Voiceflow. And if you've been following along, that's more advanced stuff for future videos. Don't look into that too much. This is our Q&A section where somebody says, or the bot says, what would you like to know? The user answers, and then it basically just spits out whatever answer it gets. It says, is there anything else? And then it's a little loop. What you're going to want to include in this is, even though this is a success and it returns, what we want is to figure out, okay, now we're going to have to do two things. First of all, improve the responses so that if the bot does not know what to say, you have a sentence that is uttered by the bot, that a very specific one, so that whenever that sentence is caught by the next block that we're going to create, it's going to create a whole nother workflow. I think showing you will be much easier. So after you go to success, you want to do something here that says logic. And the condition of this logic is going to be, if answer is, I don't know, or API response in this case. And then go ahead and use the variable API response equal, and now this has to be in quotes just to make sure that it's the exact, because this is case sensitive, just keep in mind. It's not case sensitive, but this is the exact word. It's only going to respond to this word. So if the response is I don't know, it's going to create something. And if it's not, then it's going to go back to this. No match, path. Then you can keep going as usual. But this is really the part that's important, where you want to say, if the response is I don't know, you can just have a super simple, basically failsafe that says, unfortunately, I wasn't able to answer your question. Here's the best number to reach us at. I've also notified the team of this. And then right after, let me make myself a bit smaller. Right after you've said that, you want to make another API call. And this one's going to be a post. And this is where we're going to go into the make webhook that we just made, copy that address, put it here. And then here you're going to want to put in And in the body, you're going to want to put in the data that you want to send over. For our example, this was the question that the customer asked. So let's call that unanswered questions or answered question. And the value is going to be unanswered. And you can go ahead and call this whatever you like. It just makes it very, very easy to read. Now, one thing also what I want to do is take this variable, because we did not create, we did create it, never mind. Answer question, but you're going to want to set that variable. So before we do that, let's come in here, put that there, apply to question, and that's going to be the last utterance, which is the last thing that the user said. And just like that, now let's go ahead and try this. Send a request. How old, or what's the oldest house you'll work on? Information over, code 200, which means this should have received something. Perfect. Now, right after, you want to come in here and you're going to want to send an email to either yourself, to your sales guy, or to your client, whoever the case may be. Create a new email, and like we did in the previous ones, the subject should be you, but in this case, I'm just going to put our company. Subject unknown question, and then you can put somebody had a question that I could not answer. Now keep in mind, you can go way further into this, meaning you could also make it so that it says, hey, before you actually send this over, could you please provide me with your name and your email so that I can get back to you? That's also an option. You can really go ahead and get creative with it, but for the purposes of this video, as far as value goes, this is just basically to show you an example of, well, this is where to start, and then feel free to build off of it as you see fit. Unanswered questions, press OK there. One more thing that we want to do, especially if you have a lot of customers or a lot of questions in the different variables, or you're going to want to keep some sort of track or some sort of data sheet of all of these questions so that you can maybe go in once a week and then see, well, what are the most common questions? And then from there, add those questions to your bot to not have to deal with them anymore. And that would look something like this. Let's go ahead and add a Airtable. Record, and choose the base that you're working on. And the Airtable is going to look something similar to this. It's really, really not complicated. Just one, for this example, it only has one column that just says question. You can go back into your make, and then choose that specific base. Example, and we're going to do unanswered question. And then all you're going to have to put in there is unanswered question. And boom, you're pretty much done. So now let's go ahead and test this out. If I were to turn this on, save it first, turn this on, and then if I go here, since there was nowhere to go, it sort of got bugged on Voiceflow, but I did indeed get an email saying, hey, look, no answer received. And this is what that email looked like. So that worked perfectly. However, we are not done on the Voiceflow's end side of things, because if you remember, this only triggers if this is I don't know. However, there is nothing in here that will tell it to say I don't know unless you go in and change the prompt. Now, For people who aren't using Voiceflow, this is a completely different use case. You can ignore the rest of this conversation. But for those of you who are making these bots on Voiceflow, or you're just using some sort of AI machine to like give back that answer of I don't know, you want to go ahead and into your prompt, and for us it's Stack AI. So let me jump into that really quickly. And we're now in Stack AI, and the only important part of this whole thing that applies to this conversation is really just the prompt, because you just need to include something that says if you do not have an adequate answer, or if you are not certain of something, you must say I don't know. So let's add that in real quick. I mean, even just that is pretty much enough to, I mean, even just that is enough to at least get some sort of failsafe behind it. Because it's very hard to predict what people are going to ask. A lot of people, they're try to break your bot, to be completely frank with you. This at least is going to give you some sort of control where people cannot just keep asking whatever and whatever they want to try to break it. If it generally doesn't know the answer to what people want, it'll say, I don't know. It's that simple. And you can go ahead and test this out more and try to find better ways, or sort of elaborate on it to give it different use cases. For example, where it should be more careful when saying I don't know, especially when it's talking about pricing and things of that nature. You can tell to err more on the cautious side. It's really up to you and how critical your bot is to your client's performance, or how critical it is to the overall business. However, for most use cases, just something along these lines should be just fine. And just like that, we have created 3 different workflows. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found some value out of it. If there's anything you want me to elaborate more on, or if you want the more complex make workflows, we've been using it a lot recently, and there's so many things that we can do. And I think as we go along, I'll be creating more and more videos on specific use cases for Make, especially within the sort of AI, AAA industry, or any sort of bot building uses that we come across. I'll be sure to share them as soon as we have a simple way of actually doing them. But if you have any specific questions you want me to answer, just feel free to drop them in the comments. If you want us to build a bot for you, those links are also there. And thank you for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.